we must prepare ourselves for Purim, right? Actually, I want to get myself a Megillah. I want to point out one or two ha'aros. One of them, I think I told you last year, but it's still firing me up, so I'm going to say it again. I need the chazar. That's okay. And another one will be something new. In the end of the Megillah, after Haman is hung, see, the problem doesn't go away just because they hung Haman, right? Because there was a gzeira, there was a decree that the Jews were going to be killed. And that decree was sent out by messengers to 127 Medinas that everyone should kill the Jews on the 14th day of Adar, 13th day of Adar. So Perek Ches starts that Achashverosh, they were like, in Achashverosh's mind, it seems a little bit like in Achashverosh's mind, this was, the story was over. Like the enemy was hung. Achashverosh gave Esther Hamalka the house of Haman, and Mordechai came, he had a place in front of the king. Ki higida Esther mahula. Esther said over what he is to her, that his relationship with her. And Achashverosh is ready to go home and drink, something he liked to do. And the Melech takes off his tabas that was taken off Haman's finger, because the Melech had given his ring to Haman to sign. The ring was very, very powerful. It was the Trump makes fun of the automatic signer, whatever it is, the auto pen. It was the auto pen of the time. It was the thing that you sign letters from. Vayitna leMordechai. He gave it to Mordechai, and Esther appointed Mordechai to be the officer of the house of Haman. This is what's going on. Now, in the background, there's and we're all going to die. That's still happening. So Esther comes, Vatoisef Esther. Esther comes, she has more that she needs to accomplish here. So Vatoisef Esther adds on to her what she did until now, and she speaks in front of the king. She falls at his feet, she cries, and she begs him to remove the evil of Haman and the plan that he planned about the Jews. And the king sees that she came in and she fell in front of her. She already did this once, that she came unsummoned, uninvited to the king. And Hashem at that time caused Achashverosh to reach out to her with his Sharvit Hazav, because or else she would have been killed. And she does this again. I don't think people realize this. This whole thing happens again now. That she goes in, and there's the same sakana. She was uninvited, and she goes in, she walks into the Melech, she collapses on the floor in front of him, she's crying, she's sobbing, her people are going to be killed. This is Haman is already hanging on a tree. Okay? And and the Melech again reaches out his Sharvit Hazav, and Esther stands up. And she says, if this is good for the king, and if I have found favor in front of him, and if this is a positive thing, listen to these words, if I am good in your eyes, if you love me, okay? Yikasev, let it be written, lehashiv es hasfarim, to return, everyone should send back, returned the sender. They should return the svarim, the the documents, the declarations that had been sent out, Machsheves Haman ben Hamedasa ha'Agagi, which was the plan of Haman, because he wrote La'abedes ha'Yehudim. And then she says the famous words, Ki echacha uchal v'ra'isi, because how can I watch as my people are wiped out? Okay, so this is a moment in the history. It's like, I think it's confusing for kids sometimes that are trying to follow in the Megillah, that like Haman was hung. Haman was hung. And, it was like, there was like a certain, Vayomer HaMelech Teluhu Olav, V'chamas HaMelech Shachacha. But there was still work that needed to be done to save Klal Yisrael. And just imagine the moment. Esther falls to the floor. Esther HaMalka, Abalas Ruach HaKodesh, almost Nevuah. She falls to the floor in front of the king. She says, if I am good in front of you, please return the Sfarim. And Achashverosh responds like as if he lost his train of thought. Listen to the response. The Melech Achashverosh says to Esther HaMalka and to Mordechai HaYehudi. That's, by the way, is interesting because he wasn't part of the story until now. Maybe because she said that the Mordechai is in front of the king. Maybe he was there. And that's interesting. Okay, but anyway. The Melech says, I gave you the house of Haman, right? What? What's that have to do with anything? You gave me the house. I just came in. My people are going to be killed. I gave you the house of Haman and I hung him on a tree. So if you'd like, you could write anything. I gave you a ring. You could write anything you want about the Jews. But Ksov asher nechtav b'shem hamelech v'nachtoim b'taba'as hamelech ein lahashiv. Something that's written in the handwriting of the king, so to speak, and sealed by the ring of the king cannot be returned. I gave you the house of Haman. Is that it's like a funny thing? Last night was the State of the Union. Are you aware of that? How many of you are you aware? Mm-hmm. You listened to it?
Did you do that?
Nice.
We were just laughing.
Longest State of the Union address in history. But if you take, I didn't hear that much of it, but I was in the car on the way back from the airport then. But if you take out all the clapping, it's not that long.
They clapped.
Right. I think the Congress and the Senate, I think they lose 5-10 pounds that night, just getting up, sitting down, getting up, sitting down. But one of the things that's interesting about this president, I'm not getting into politics. It's not. This is not the time and place for that. But what's interesting is that he has his talking points, and he will always talk his talking points. You know what I mean? Like what he's accomplished or whatever. So he'll always say again and again what he's accomplished. It's a strategy. He'll always talk his talking points. Okay? Like Achashverosh. Again, try to understand what's happening here. This woman comes in front of Achashverosh, the queen. She falls to the floor crying because her people are going to die. Achashverosh is like, I gave the house of Haman to you. What? Why is that important? What does that have to do with what I just said? It's not a valid question. Yeah, valid?
It's like building the ballroom.
Yeah. So here's what I think. This occurred to me one year while I was listening to the Megillah. And I think what's happening is like this. I think that Haman is going to Achashverosh and she's asking Achashverosh to rescind the Gzeira, to erase the Gzeira. But I think, as we know, that when it says Melech, it means also HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I think that when she said Vatoimer im al HaMelech Toiv, if it's good to the king, I think she was davening to Hashem also. And she was saying, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we did tshuva, your anger was diminished already with the hanging of Haman. You already showed that the tide had turned already when you had Mordechai paraded around town by Haman. You showed already that the tide was turning to the benefit of Klal Yisrael. As Zeresh announced, right? In Mizera HaYehudim, Mordechai, that if Achiloisel Inpal Lefanav, once you started to fall in front of him, Nafal Tipal, you'll continue to fall in front of him. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but now we still have to daven that the Gzeira should be rescinded. And you could hear better her saying to Hashem, V'toiva ani be'einav, if I'm good, if I've done good, I did tshuva, I worked on myself. If toiva ani be'einav, if I'm good in the eyes of Hashem, please erase this Gzeira. And the Melech doesn't want to erase the Gzeira. The Melech says we can bring about a Yeshua, but we're not erasing the Gzeira. We can empower you to fight and to win, but we're not erasing the Gzeira. The Gzeira doesn't get erased. And I think there's something very, very, very important here. I think that what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us is that when tragic things happen, they happen for a reason. And they happen because Hashem wants us to gain certain things, that He wants us to gain. And when we're dealing with difficult things, there are kinyanim, there are things Hashem wants us to acquire because we're going through those difficult things. Hashem's not out to torture us. Hashem wants for our benefit that we should grow and thrive from the difficult things that He gives us. Now, the house of Haman represents one of those kinyanim that the Jewish people gained as a result of the fact that Haman started up with them. Had Haman not threatened the annihilation of Klal Yisrael, the base Haman, the house of Haman, whatever that includes, whatever koichos, whatever wealth, whatever power is included in the house of Haman, that now Klal Yisrael can use that in the service of Hashem. There's more that they have to use in the service of Hashem. We would never have gotten the base Haman had Haman not started up with us. So when Esther came to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and said, rewind, take it away, take the Gzeira away, the Melech says, I gave you the house of Haman. What is the Melech saying? The Melech is saying there are kinyanim that you gained from this tragedy. We don't just rewind. We thrive and grow through it. We process, become better people. We develop new koichos from what we go through. We don't just say, okay, I'm walking away. It's over. I think it's so commendable, so admirable when someone is in a time of sakana or difficulty and they take certain kabbalas on themselves. And then things work out. Or sometimes, le'aleinu, things don't work out. Maybe the person that they were davening for passes away. And they continue to do the things that they were makabel on themselves. They continue to do that thing. They continue to do, we took on at a certain point recently, my wife is much better at it than I am, to say Asher Yatzar looking inside. And then the situation that made us do that passed. Do we still do it? I want to explain something. There's an argument to be made that you should not still do it, because you were doing it in order to try to affect a certain outcome, right? As a schus for a certain outcome. I don't have to do this bully nether, but I try to say Oleinu looking inside. That's what I try to do. Somebody very close to me went off the derech, and that's something that I try to be makabel, because Oleinu is all about being makir machos shamayim. So I try to say Oleinu looking inside. let's say that person, we should be Zeicha would do tshuva. Okay? So now do I stop looking inside? There's a logic to say I was doing it as a schus, that he should look inside, that he should do tshuva. Now he did tshuva, now I don't have to look inside anymore. But no, it's the wrong way to look at it. Why? Because looking inside for Aleinu is like the house of Haman. It's a kinyan. It's something that I am different now because I took that upon myself. Now I do that. I'm a different person. I added to the repertoire of what I try to offer in my Avodas Hashem. I do something different now. If I just say, oh Hashem, thank you so much. I'm so happy I don't have to do this stuff anymore. That's it. Now, I'm not talking about the incredible stories in this community and in other places of people that took on certain things like by October 7th, not in their hanhagos, but in terms of depriving themselves of certain things. There are Yid, and my wife was telling me that she met a from mother in Eretz Yisrael who told her, this was like in our family, this was like we still can't wrap our head around it. This woman did not eat chocolate or ice cream from October 7th until the last hostage came back. I don't know. If she fasted Monday and Thursday, I wouldn't have been as impressed. Chocolate and ice cream? For 2 years? But when the last hostage came back, she went back to eating chocolate and ice cream. I discovered she doesn't like it so much anymore. Interesting. But, yeah. But, I'm not talking about things like that where we're mishtatef with someone's tsar for as long as they're b'tsar. And when the tsar is over, now we're no longer mishtatef. And I'm also not talking about the concept of a Kabbalah where someone is makabel on themselves something for a certain amount of time. Lechatchila. There is such a thing as taking upon oneself. I heard this from a Chassidish social worker many, many years ago when someone went through a tzara that he was talking about lighting neiros early, which is a beautiful thing to do. And he advised his family that for the month after they had this tzara, for the month after, for 4 Shabbosim, the wife should be Makabel Shabbos early. But it was, you understand, it was the kinyan is the initial thing was that I'm doing it for this amount of time. Because it's not always smart in our Avodah Hashem to just keep adding things and adding things and adding things. You have to be very judicious and very careful how you build your palace of your Avodah Hashem. But I'm talking about where like, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm having this health challenge. I really want to get better, so now I'm going to do this. Oh, I'm better? I don't need to do it anymore. I'm done. That's not recognizing that thing was a kinyan. That thing was something that you gained. And that's what's happening here in the Psukim. You hear now what the Beis Haman is. The response of the Melech is, you don't want me to rescind the Gzeira. This Gzeira did good for you. You became wealthy over this Gzeira. Because the Beis Haman is now yours. And there's a lot of powerful good things that you could do with the Beis Haman. So, and even the Va'osai, that he was hung on, what was the lashon? Va'osai talu al ha'etz, that they hung him on a tree. That also, what the Melech is saying is, evil was eradicated because of that Gzeira. You don't want me to rewind the Gzeira. You just want to thrive and achieve something from this Gzeira. And that's the answer. That's where he says, this whole part of the Megillah is like this funny part of the Megillah, that Persian law, they can't rescind the Dvar HaMelech. They can only make another law. It's just a funny thing. Right? We grew up with that, but where's that from? There's a certain hashkafa to it, mitzara malchus shamayim, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, I didn't make a mistake. You needed that gzeira. Now you need something else. You davened more, you did tshuva. Now you'll steig and grow even more from the gzeira. And you'll have a Yeshua from it. But to take it back sounds like everything you gained was not worth it. No. Hashem wants to validate and value each kinyan that we have from the difficult things that we go through. I think that's a very, very powerful, very, very, very powerful thing. I said over a few times in Eretz Yisrael, this idea, Rabbi Woznicki asked me this on Purim, I think last year or the year before, May even be the year before. Who knows? The Purims all blur into one Purim in my mind. But he asked that Haman has that really, really, really bad day that he walks Mordechai around the city. He comes home, Evel v'chafui roish. Avelos, indignity, he's done. And he comes home and he tells his wife, Es kol asher karahu. What does karahu mean? Karahu means everything that happened to him. But what's the shirish of karahu? Do you know? The shirish is mikra. Mikra means like a coincidence. Something that happened to be. You wouldn't believe what happened. Like that kind of lashon. He came home and told Zeresh, it's kol asher karahu. Now for a guy to say that something just happened to happen, makes sense. That's what goyim are, right? But Rabbi Woznicki pointed out, unbelievable, he pointed out that Mordechai says exactly the same thing. Mordechai comes to the palace gates in sackcloth and ashes. Esther sends out Hasach to find out what's going on because Mordechai can't go in dressed that way into the palace. Yisaper Mordechai lahasach es kol asher karahu. He said everything. Like whatever, it just happened to be, whatever. Haman's just going to kill all the Jews, whatever. What a coincidence. It's like mikra, like a coincidence. It's funny lashon for a tzaddik to say. And he's turning his whole life around and he's getting the whole Klal Yisrael to do tshuva. Apparently he doesn't think it's a coincidence. So why does he say it's kol asher nasa? I think the lashon, I think it says Mordechai yoda es kol asher nasa. I think it even says that lashon. Yeah, beginning of Perek Daled, Mordechai yoda es kol asher nasa. Mordechai knew everything that happened, that was done. That makes sense. Everything that just so happened to happen, that's how you talk about it, Sarah? What does that mean? I think the pshat is very similar to this. The pshat is, which is Hashem's ikar midah, and which is Hashem's vehicle to get us to his ikar midah, when good things happen or bad things happen. In other words, when good things happen, that is what Hashem wants for us. Hashem doesn't say, I really want you to really have a lot of pain and misery, but whatever, I made a good thing happen, just as a heichatimtza to get you to the misery. That's not the way Hashem takes care of his people, right? Adarabah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I want you to have oira, v'simcha, v'sasa, and v'ikar. That's what I want you to have. When we say, La Yehudim, I say oira, v'simcha, v'sasa, and v'ikar, we don't say, like, so mysterious, why would Hashem want that? We don't do that. We know HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us, and He wants to share with us oira, v'simcha, v'sasa, v'ikar, all the good things, right? And when bad things happen, what do we say? Hashem must have a reason. We know this is not His end goal. We know this is not what He wants. This is just a vehicle, a way to get us to what He really wants. That's why Mordechai uses the words as kol asher karahu. It just so happened to be. He doesn't mean that it was a coincidence. He means this is not Hashem's real hanhaga. This was in order to get us somewhere. Hashem needed to wake us up. Hashem needed to bring certain Yeshuas to us. So to get us up, this happened. But this is not Hashem's midah. It's an external midah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gets us to get what we need. Okay. There's a message on Purim that's important for us to remember. It's important for us to remember b'nagea to the people around us. And in a way, it's maybe even more important for us to remember about ourselves. The Chazal tell us, Haman came in front of Achashverosh, and he started to tell him a story about the Jewish people. Yeshna yam echad. There is this nation, this one nation. Mefuzar u'mefayrad bein ha'amim. They're spread out and separated among the nations. V'dosei hamelech einam oisim, they don't do They don't follow the laws. V'lamelech ein shaveh lahanicham, and it's not worthwhile to the king to leave them here. Imal hamelech toiv, if it finds favor in your eyes, let's kill them. Right? That's what Mordechai does. That's what Haman does. And Chazal tell us, les di yoda leishta uye lishna bisha kehaman. There was nobody that knew how to speak Lashon Hara as well as Haman. Haman was a master misaper Lashon Hara. What does that mean? Haman wove into those sentences so much criticism on Klal Yisrael that he could have written a blog. Okay? Haman had Yeshnai am echad. Yashen means to be sleeping. He said, Yeshenim in ha-mitzvahs. They're sleeping. They're asleep behind the wheel. Mefuzar and Mefayra, they're spread out and separated. They can't get along with each other. There's Dasei HaMelech Ein HaMa'isim, and so on and so forth. Each thing, Haman wove in. Some people are experts. They're like, in a short time, they can say so much criticism. It's amazing. Like Miyot, that holds the Meruba, It's just amazing. Nobody knew how to say Lashon Hara like Haman. Now, Haman was a very bad man, so I'm not surprised that he was a master Mesaper Lashon Hara. But it's important to understand why we relate the midah of speaking Lashon Hara specifically to Haman. And the reason is as follows. Haman believes in evil. He believes in Ra. How do I know that? Because Haman believes that there could be a world without Klal Yisrael. We understand that all evil exists just for us to conquer. Why is there really bad? Hashem creates bad? Is there anything bad about Hashem? Kol ma'da avid rachmana, everything Hashem does, l'tav of it, He does for the good. There's no bad. So why do you find bad in your life? It's a challenge, it's a nisayon, it's a disguise, but it's not bad, right? Haman says, yes it is. Because Haman believes that it's not all just so that we should accomplish and grow, or else he wouldn't have tried to wipe us out. Why is this important? Because that's why we don't speak Lashon Hara. We don't speak Lashon Hara because we believe that people are inherently good. It's not just, we look at not speaking Lashon Hara as like we have super good midos, we're so sweet. But if you know how important Lashon Hara is, when you go out into the world, in the secular world, can you imagine, some of us have been around secular people. First of all, they don't understand the concept of not speaking Lashon Hara. Of course we speak Lashon Hara. What else do you do when someone walks out of a room? If not, speak about them. Of course. That's first of all. And second of all, it's like pinch you on the cheek kind of sweet. You can imagine in politics, someone's like, I don't want to say anything bad about another person. Oh, you're so sweet. We don't look at it as a real value. The Chavetz Chaim writes about not speaking Lashon Hara, your entire Olam Haba depends on it. This is the most important value. HaKadosh Baruch Hu judges this. Hashem cares. The nations of the world, they're like, oh, you don't speak badly about other people? Nice. Right? It's not. If they believe it, nice. They don't understand it. Why? Because we don't not speak Lashon Hara because we're sweet. We don't speak Lashon Hara because we don't think people are bad. And to speak Lashon Hara is to lie. Because even when a Jew does something bad, we know that that's not really who they are. Just like we just said about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that his Iker Midah is Tov, we believe about ourselves that our main Midah is goodness. And therefore we don't accentuate the bad in other people because that's not descriptive of them. That's not who they really are. Who they really are, when you go to a levaya and they're describing the person in glowing terms, and you knew the person, and the person also had some not good midas, are they lying by the levaya? It took me a few years after I got out of the cynical teenage years, to realize they're not lying. Because the enduring midos of the person are what we say by the Levaya. And the other things, that's not who they were. Because Yidden are good. When it says Haman knew how to speak Lashon Hara better than anyone, is because he didn't believe in the inherent goodness of people. That's why he was so talented in speaking Lashon Hara. And it's important to realize when we say that Haman's Gzeira was on every Jew, even if they weren't from, let's say, right? A not from Jew would get off the hook from Haman. No. The Yevanim, as we've spoken about many times, the Yevanim were very happy as long as you weren't observant. They didn't really, you're Jewish, you're not Jewish, that's fine. No problem. I have a lot of Jewish friends, you know what people say? I have a lot of Jewish friends, you know. Oh, my sister's married to a Jew, like that kind of thing. I have a lot of Jewish friends. Rahman al-Islam. The Yevanim are very happy if you're to be Jewish, as long as you are not observant. But Haman's not happy with not observant, right? Haman wants us eradicated. Why? Why does he want us eradicated? What if a person is absolutely not serving Hashem? Why isn't Haman happy with that? Because Haman's campaign is against the inherent goodness of Klal Yisrael. Haman wants to bring out, I'm going to eradicate all the goodness. That inherent Kedusha. That inherent goodness, which is why we don't speak Lashon Hara, that's what Haman's trying to destroy. That hasaga, that idea. I believe that that's a major part of the drinking on Purim, and the costumes on Purim, and the lightness of Purim. There's like these minhagim of singing Gramin, of making Purim spiels. Like, where did this all come from? Okay, everyone did it on different madrigas. My father tells me, I didn't hear any, I didn't hear this from anyone else, but my father tells me that, could be Rabbi Kalish once told me that his father told him the same thing. My father told me that Rav Aaron Cutler used to do like a Purim spiel also. Okay, you know what his Purim spiel was? He would quote a Rambam, and he would say a long shir on the Rambam. And then it would turn out there's no such Rambam. Get it? That was his Purim spiel. But in all the yeshivas, they made Purim spiel. There was like a certain lightness, Rav Wolbe writes that Rabbi Sonnenschein used to be rolling around on the floor drunk on Purim. If you listened, if you bent your head down to listen, you would hear just Torah pouring out of his mouth. So don't do that if you're not going to have Torah pouring out of your mouth. Okay, you have to be on a madrega to do that. To be shikr, like they say, kishikrusai shaloit, to be so shikr that you don't know what's going on around you. That you have to be on a madrega to do that. But there's got to be a reason for that. Like it's an interesting tzura, like the Pesach Seder tzura. I get what's this tzura of just like, and what the costumes, like everyone's just dressed funny, covering themselves up. What's going on here? And all of it boils down to because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're a Talmid Chacham or not a Talmid Chacham, if you're, what kind of Jew you are, which shul you daven in, what political party you're affiliated with. All of that doesn't matter. It's just that I am a Yid. And that doesn't mean that the other parts are not important. Other Yomim Tovim celebrate other parts of being a Yid. But Purim represents that I am a Yid. That there's so much Kedusha and so much goodness and so much power just in that I am a Jew. So I could be drunk and look funny and be making jokes that aren't even great jokes. And it doesn't matter. Because Purim, that's what the whole point of Purim is, that it doesn't matter. Because we love each person because of who they are. And I think it's important, to be makabel people that way on Purim. Purim is a day of being tremendously accepting of people. People come in, and some people are drunk, and some people are sober, and some people are super, into their costume and their shalach manas, and some people aren't, and some people, people are coming into your houses, or you're running around the streets, and there's traffic, and word has it there may be snow. Have you heard that? Mm-hmm. Word has it we may have a very exciting Purim. So, and it's easy to get stressed out from people. Stressed out and annoyed from people. And there's an avodah on Purim of just loving every Jew. Just loving Jews. We got used to growing up here in Waterbury the last 26 years. We got used to this chavivas for each individual. We've talked about this before, that I don't drive into Brooklyn that much now, and I drive into Queens straight into Yeshiva. But we used to have this for years, that we would drive in, and then there was that first from person that you saw when you drove into town, And we spend so much time in Waterbury that we were always so who is that? Why don't I know who that is? We expected to know everyone, but there's that excitement when you see another Yid. You see another Yid. Some of you have traveled. You're walking down the street somewhere, middle of nowhere. You're vacationing in Maine, and suddenly you see another from family walk by. You're not just hi. You're hello, who are you? Where are you from? What's your maiden name? When did you go to seminary? By the time you're done, the two husbands are by the time you're done, you already know you're already making shidduchim, because we have a chavivas for each other when we meet each other out there. And that's our job. That's our job on Purim, is the beauty, La Yehuda Ma'isa, the beauty of every single Yid. The beauty of every Yid, the specialness of the preciousness of every Yid, and therefore the respect that every Yid deserves, and the love that every Yid deserves. And as I always point out, that includes ourselves as well. The Purim is a day to appreciate our own goodness and our own... there are times that we look at ourselves a little bit more critically. Before Rosh Hashanah, before Yom Kippur, and we talk about tshuva and change, and there's a lot to grow and change on Purim. But the first step on Purim is to recognize what we are, not what we do. What our identity is. What we do, that's the second step. But we are Jews, because that is what the Gzeira was against us. The Gzeira was against what we are. It wasn't about how many kapitlach of Tehillim we say a day, or how many suppers we make for new, for women that have babies, or any of that. That's not. Those are all incredible, amazing things. But the Gzeira was on a Jew, someone born from a Jewish mother. That's what the Gzeira was on. So if you were born from a Jewish mother or became Jewish, through Gerus, then the Gzeira was on you. And that's enough to appreciate the beauty. In other words, what we're really being told with this combination of Chanukah and Purim is that there's two parts, and Rav Hutner used to say this, there's two parts to the joy of being a Jew. There's the joy of who we are, and there's the joy of what we do. Purim is the joy of who we are. And Chanukah is the joy of what we do. Of course, both overlap with each other, of course. But that's the difference if you think about it. The simcha of Purim is Shaloi Asani Goy, that I'm a Yid. Ashreinu matayv chelkeinu umanoim gairaleinu. How fortunate we are that Hashem chose us and loves us. The simcha of Chanukah is the simcha of, look what we could accomplish. We could learn Torah and remain devoted to Hashem and be zeicha to nisim and so on and so forth. That's the madrega of Chanukah. So let's focus on the right time of year, the right simcha. The simcha of Purim is that I am a Jew. That's all, just the joy that I was chosen. We can have that simcha all day, from the minute Purim starts to the end of Purim. Just the joy that I am a Yid. Vasich ben a Yid, like I say in Yiddish. That I am a Yid. And Hashem should help us to be able to see in all the difficult and challenging things in life, to be able to notice and to recognize and to achieve the kinyanim, the base hamans that we need to acquire from our challenges, and to be able to appreciate them, and that we should be able to be menatzeach ultimately, and to transcend the challenges, so that the tzaros end, and we come away from the difficulties with the things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to come away with, and we should be zoicha as well that we should be able to see in ourselves, in our families, in our children, in our neighbors, in our community members, in religious Jews and not religious Jews. It doesn't matter. To be able to see the beauty, the kedusha, the shining royalty that shines out of every Jew just because of what he is, because he's a Yid. Afrei lechem param. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.